Thank you for joining us. Please like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And for more information about this show and the rest of Chor Leoni's season, visit chorleoni.org and subscribe to our newsletter, The E-Roar. This episode of Chor Leoni Inside is proudly sponsored by Alan Cathcart, one of our beloved singers.
Say it's all right. They say it's all right. Say it's all right. Have a good time, 'cause it's all right.
Hello and welcome to Chor Leoni Inside. My name is Eric Light, and I am the artistic director of Chor Leoni Men's Choir here in Vancouver, British Columbia. And so glad to have you for what's going to be a great episode of Chor Leoni Inside. Our guest today is composer Saunder Choi, and he's just writing such incredible music, and happy to share his gifts with all of you and some of his perspectives as well. But before we do that, I want to play a little bit of music from Chor Leoni from a couple years back. This piece comes from our composer in residence, Zachary Wadsworth, and it comes from a set of music that he wrote for us called Future Folk Songs, for which he wrote both the lyrics and the music. The idea behind this work from Zachary was that he was projecting himself well into the future, hundreds of years into the future, and imagined what sort of folk songs we would be singing about right now. And so all of this is looking at what's going on in our lives kind of right now from some sort of futuristic perspective. And what we're going to play for you is the first movement of the set of pieces called "Oh, There Was a Time." And it really is a reflection on all of our current events, but looking at it from the perspective that that's how we used to be. I think thankfully in this work, there's a bit of hope that maybe some of the stuff that we describe in the piece, humanity has gotten past. So without any further ado, we'll play for you "Oh, There Was a Time" from Future Folk Songs by Zachary Wadsworth, Chor Leoni singing.
Oh, there was a time, 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 there was a time when flags were raised in all the nations. Oh, that was a time when the sun would sing in celebration. That though they struggled, begged and fought, they built themselves a homeland. They swapped and settled, stole and bought, but it was not their own. Was a time, was a time, there was a time, there was a time, was a time, there was a time, was a time, there was a time, there was a time, was a time, was a time, there was a time, there was a time of bigotry and superstition. Oh, that was a time of hatred, terror, and attrition. When families were torn apart for claims of integration, when people's ways and people's art were near annihilation. There was a time, 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 there was a time of truth and reconciliation. Oh, that was a time of honesty and contemplation. And though the wrongs were not undone and suffering not deleted, but once the candor had begun, the truth was
That was Oh, There Was a Time by Zachary Wadsworth, our composer in residence from his larger suite, Future Folk Songs. And man, I just love that piece. Not only the music, but the text especially. I'm glad we were able to put that up on the screen. And really amazing that Zachary himself wrote all the text for that suite and that piece. And I think it's a really brilliant work, and I can't wait to get back to singing it someday soon. I want to bring in our guest for the show today. He is a composer that I have admired from afar for quite a while. Please welcome Saunder Choi. Hello, Saunder.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
It's really nice to talk with you. Tell everybody just the real quick version of how did you get to become a composer?
So I'm born and raised in the Philippines, in Manila. I'm currently based in Los Angeles. I sang with the Philippine Madrigal Singers when I was back in the Philippines, and I was one of their resident composers and arrangers. And that's really probably one of the most important musical experiences of my life is my time with them. I moved to Boston about, oh gosh, like 9 years ago now, to do my undergrad in music there. And then I moved to LA to do my master's in composition at USC. And I've been living and working here as a composer and as a choral artist ever since then.
That's fantastic. The Philippine Madrigal Singers are just this really iconic group, and one that I've just loved, I think, forever. If you had to bring it down to two things that you walk away from, that you carry with you as far as musical experiences, maybe not times that you had, but lessons or things that you valued from that experience, what might those be?
That people from different parts of the world have different styles of singing and music making, and that one is not better than the other. So when I say something like
Wow.
that, I mean that, folk singing from the Philippines isn't better than opera. I think that both of them are we oftentimes confuse, operatic singing or that Western bel canto type of singing as the hierarchical,
Yeah.
more put it on a pedestal type of singing, but different cultures in the world use singing in different ways. And that singing can bring communities together regardless of cultural background or experiences in life. That's probably what I took away most from the Philippine Madrigal Singers, because we toured a lot and we
Yeah.
sang with a lot of different choirs from different parts of the world. And those are some of the best music making experiences that I've had in my life.
That's amazing, and it makes me want to join the Philippine Madrigal Singers just so that those lessons could come back to me, even more so. What a remarkable takeaway, and it's quite a unique experience. I want to play for folks a bit of your composing work. And the first piece I want to focus on here is Brothers of the Sea. Can you tell us a little bit about the genesis of this piece?
Yeah, so Brothers of the Sea is a piece that I've written for the SYC Ensemble Singers. SYC is short for Singapore Youth Choir. They're based in Singapore. A funny story is that the SYC Ensemble Singers, as well as Ko Matsushita's choir, the Gaia Philharmonic Chorus, and the Ateneo Chamber Singers formed this friendship. Speaking of bringing communities together, these are choirs from 3 different countries, one from the Philippines, one from Singapore, and one from Japan. And they do this choral festival where they get together, sort of rotating between Tokyo, Manila, and Singapore once every 3 years, I believe. And in 2016, it was the Philippines' turn to host. It was the Ateneo Chamber Singers' turn to host, with Jonathan Velasco as their conductor. Yeah. And so the artistic director of SYC Ensemble Singers, Jennifer Tam, who is part-time in Vancouver.
Sometimes in Vancouver.
Wanted to commission a Filipino composer. And so I wrote Brothers of the Sea for them. The text is a traditional fisherman song from Samar, which is one of the provinces in the Philippines. It's been translated in English. And I found it in this dollar bin book called Earth Prayers. I believe I got it from the Last Bookstore in LA. And it's just a collection of wonderful, wonderful texts that lend themselves very, very well to choral music. And that's Brothers of the Sea.
Oh, fantastic. And it's wonderful to see the SYC choirs and our friend Jennifer Tam conducting. This is Brothers of the Sea by Saunder Choi.
Brothers
That was live from Singapore, Brothers of the Sea, written by Saunder Choi. Saunder, that is a really remarkable piece. Thank you for sharing that with us. It's
Thank you so much.
yeah. And has that been one of the things that I think every composer has a little bit of is pieces getting performed, for the commission, and then the life afterwards. I would assume a lot of your pieces are enjoying good lives after their premiere. How has that been for you of being seeing performances happen probably all over the world that you're not necessarily connected with in any way with your music?
It's been wonderful, and I think that's one of the joys of being a composer is, unlike being a conductor, being a performer where you actually need to be at a physical space and collaborating with the choir. When you're a composer, your piece lives in this, that language, what you want to say lives in this piece of paper through the notes, and different communities can read that and connect with that. And there have been so many times where I have had performances in concerts that I cannot go to. The latest of which actually is in Portugal. Oddly enough, that window they had late last year.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Where they could have concerts. I had an orchestral premiere in Portugal with the Portuguese Philharmonic Orchestra, and there was just no way that I could be there. But my piece was, and a part of me was, and I was able to watch the live stream of the concert through wonderful internet.
Right. I want to follow up on that just a little bit, though. I mean, it is always amazing when you make something and then you see it sort of have life outside of you. Have there been moments, though? I mean, where either so maybe some of the background that you've had in your thinking about the piece, or maybe some of the cultural aspects of what you're bringing to your work. Have you had any moments where you're just like, oh, I wish I could have been there and been a little bit more hands-on, where that education and that connection might have been stronger and created a maybe a more understanding process?
Yeah, sometimes definitely that has happened. Not for Brothers of the Sea, because when Sacra Profana performed Brothers of the Sea here, I was actually working with it. I mean, San Diego is not a far drive from Los Angeles, and I've driven to watch their concerts a few times, including when they performed Brothers of the Sea. And I think what's great about our world right now is it's so easy to reach out to composers because of social media and
Zoom.
It's just such a digital world that even if the composers are not physically present, they're always available to chat about the piece and to give context and to do Zoom workshops, etc. Yeah.
For my 2 cents, I do hope that this revolution that we've had of having to connect, being forced to connect with one another only through digital medium is something that we can bring into our in real life times when we come back out of this, so that we realize that these connections are just one Zoom call away, and our enjoyment, our understanding, our education, and our ability to tell stories that are maybe not necessarily ours can be heightened through these connections that we're getting digitally. It has been a real change in how at least I'm thinking, and I hope it is for all of us in this field, really.
Yeah, it reminds me of a workshop I did with tonality. There was a panel, we did a leadership workshop, and people were asking like, "Oh, how do we perform socially aware music, or how do we advocate for that music when we don't have members of that community in our choir?"
It's a very
And
important question.
you know, for us, it's like, you know, I mean, technology makes them available for you through a Zoom workshop. Like, people should not be afraid of asking for help
Yeah.
when it comes to those types of things.
Yeah. I want to play for folks another piece of yours that I just I've been listening to it quite a lot in this last week. Ang Tren. Can you give us the background of this piece? Who you wrote it for? What it's about? Anything we should be listening for as we hear this performance?
So, Ang Tren was written in 2015 for the Andrea O Veneracion International Choral Festival. This is the second of that festival that was hosted in the Philippines. It is sponsored by the Philippine Madrigal Singers. Andrea O Veneracion, of course, is the founder of the Philippine Madrigal Singers, and this international choral festival was created in her honor. And every festival composer is commissioned to write the competition piece that all of the choirs, particularly the mixed choirs, are supposed to perform. Mm-hmm. So since this is a competition, I wanted to write something a little bit more virtuosic, a little bit in the vein of Southeast Asian choral music.
There's a little flash in this piece, yeah.
There's a little flash in this piece for sure. It's highly rhythmic, and what's special, or what a special feature in Asian polyphonic music, is something we call onomatopoeia, which is that imitation of non-musical sounds around you, or sometimes even musical sounds, often voices imitating instruments or native instruments in that particular country. Ang Tren is a poem by one of our national poets, Jose Corazon de Jesus. He lived in the early part of the 20th century, sort of, you know, between that World War I, World War II eras. And this is the story of a journey of a loved one leaving their partner and boarding a train and going to the provinces and not being able to see each other for a certain amount of time.
It's a wonderful work. I want to play for everyone here. This is Ang Tren, music by Saunder Choi. That was Ang Tren, music by Saunder Choi, our guest here on Chor Leoni Inside. Fabulous piece. So when that was premiered, how many choirs then, was it lots of choirs used that as like the compulsory piece, or however they phrased that?
Yeah, yes, there were about 12 choirs
Jeez.
performed it that night.
Did you get to hear all 12?
I did actually.
That
I
has
was
to be surreal.
Yes, it was so surreal. Um, Especially because I used some contemporary techniques in the piece, and this is sort of like that level thing where people who have or who are trained in new music have just a little bit more advantage.
Uh-huh.
Uh, some people who were used to performing more traditional music, for example, did not know what to do with the aleatoric boxes that were set up there, or did not know what the arrow with the pointed arrow note head meant. And so that came up a lot as questions. And because it's a competition, they have to be very careful
Yeah.
on what they ask the composer, right? And not really necessarily available to coach a particular group, because if it's a competition, that would sort of be against the rules.
Yeah, I was wondering how that, because I've never done one of those compulsory pieces for a festival or a competition, and I was always wondering, like, from your end of things, like how much, like, hey Saunder, can I take you out for coffee? And then, or maybe something stronger so I can get some real information out of it. Yeah. Yeah, so you weren't able to really to do coaching, or could they ask like a little bit of something, or like is it just they lock you in a room and then you bring you out for
I think if it's a technical question, like what do you mean by this notation, they
Uh-huh.
could ask me, but like, could you listen to our recording and to our rehearsal recording and give us
Oh,
pointers? I
yeah.
think that wasn't allowed.
That
I was
seems, yeah.
specifically told not to respond to those emails.
Did you get any?
Yes.
Oh
There was
man.
no recording though. There was it was just a question, and I
Sure,
said, I
sure.
don't think I'm allowed to do this.
And I just want to ask, so like how different were all the performances? Like was it just a huge range in that one evening of 12 performances of the same piece?
I would say for the more advanced choirs, it was pretty similar.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
Actually, the recording that you just played is by the Archipelago Singers, which is an Indonesian choir. Um, and they won the competition. But the University of the East Chorale with Ana Abeleda Piquero also did a stellar job with Ang Tren. And for the longest time, I was like, oh man, which recording do I put on my
Right.
website?
Edit one together where they go back and forth. Yeah.
I was like, wow, it was the both really, really good recordings. And
Right.
sometimes just that's a blessing if that happens, you
Oh, I
know?
mean, this doesn't happen normally. Like this embarrassment of riches. But that's just got to be so, especially to have it all in like one evening. That has to be just such a bizarre and very cool feeling.
Yeah.
What they should have then let you is conduct all the choirs together in like big mass version of it, and that would have been cool. But they usually never let that happen. This pandemic has been let's not beat around the bush. It's been rough on everyone. Composers, it's as I've been talking to composers, it's been, I think, so as I'm getting feedback, it's been sort of a mixed bag for people. For a lot of composers I talk to, it's been some of the busiest times that they've had. That commissions keep coming, and your activity, you don't necessarily have to have groups of people coming together to do the writing, which is great. This next piece that we're going to play has had its premiere during the pandemic, and I just love for you to comment on what you've been, how you've been personally handling it, or how it's been treating you personally, and then and maybe how that relates into the recording of this piece we're gonna hear.
Yeah, for me, as someone who directs a music program at a church right now and oversees, staff singers, um, it's been a lot more work because I have to provide that
Yeah.
music every week. I am, I can do production, I'm not afraid of using software. I also edit the videos myself. And so my workload has definitely increased. Um, but it has provided such great opportunities for me to play around with production, for example.
Sure.
Maybe have my soprano staff singer echo herself on these tracks. And it just gives a very different feeling and different spectrum of textures and techniques that wouldn't be available for you in a live performance
Live. Yeah.
setting, unless you're specifically doing electronic music. So my attitude during the pandemic is just to embrace whatever we're handed, to embrace the virtual space that we are handed. And I think that has that attitude um, has helped our music program thrive at UU Santa Monica. Of course, here and there, I all of my singing gigs have now become virtual,
Right.
and so we now have a permanent setup to record virtual choirs and a ring light and all that fun stuff. My commissions have been postponed. Several premieres last year have been
Sure.
postponed. Um, but at the tail end, at the start, very start of the pandemic is when I finished Welcome Table. And Invitation to Love, which is what you're going to be hearing next, is actually written during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Um,
Tell us about this piece. The background of it, the text, inspiration, etc.
yeah, so there was a competition called the King Singers New Music Prize. Um, and I wanted to compose for it. Um, and one of the text that is in the choices of text for them is Paul Laurence Dunbar's Invitation to Love. And of course, after what happened last, all the attacks towards Black and Indigenous people of color last year, I felt it equitable for me to set text by a Black poet who is a contemporary of people like Sarah Teasdale and Emily Dickinson, but
Right.
probably is not as famous as them.
Yeah. A
Um,
wonderful poet. I mean, just
a
and
wonderful
I've known his
poet
poetry
who's
forever. Yeah.
who's underrated and underappreciated and not as celebrated as his contemporaries
Mhm.
because of the color of his skin. Safe to assume at that time. Um, and so I immediately gravitated toward that text. Um, but at the same time, uh, I was also completing a set of songs called the Songs of Welcome, which is my own personal reflections on being an immigrant here. It started with a piece called New Colossus that I wrote for the LA Choral Lab, and then a piece called Give You Rest, and then a consortium called Welcome Table, um, and then Invitation to Love, because the text says, and you are welcome, welcome, welcome. I just felt like, it was it lended itself well to be recontextualized in the eyes of an immigrant.
Yep.
I can't really comment on slavery because I'm not Black. I can empathize. I cannot I cannot really comment on the Black experience because I'm not Black, and I shouldn't comment on the Black experience because I'm not Black. Um, and so I chose to see the text in the lens of my personal experience as an immigrant, and I just found that it lended itself well to that experience as well.
It's a fantastic piece, and this was recorded virtually, as
Recorded
because-
remotely.
yeah, remotely, and but also very beautifully. It was really, really, really well done. I want to play everyone right now. This is "Invitation to Love," music of Saunder Choi.
Come when the nights are bright with stars, or come when the moon is mellow. Come when the sun its golden bars drops on the hayfield yellow, 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 yellow. Come in the twilight soft and gray. Come in the night or in the day. Come, our love, when I am Come when the nights are bright with stars. You are sweet, oh love, dear love. You are soft, soft as the nesting dove. Come, come to my heart. Come to my heart and bring it to rest. As the bird flies home to its welcome nest, as the bird flies home to its welcome nest, the bird flies home to its welcome nest. Come first blossom blows. Come when the summer gleams and glows. Come with winter's drifting Welcome, you are
That was "Invitation to Love" by Saunder Choi. That's just beautiful. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing that. I want to follow up on something you said before we got to hear that piece. Talking about not commenting on the Black experience because of who you are, but for someone like me, you are a composer, a creator, somebody who is going to put down notes on a page that I may sing. In fact, the next piece we're going to do, we are going to be singing next year if we can ever get back to singing. And you're in the United States now as an immigrant. You're a person of color, and so your shift from being in the Philippines to here, I would imagine that has been a very different perspective on not just where you are, but let me ask this as a question: has it given you a different perspective on who you are?
Yeah, it has. I mean, I think that anytime you move to another place, your identity changes. Or even if you don't move, just as we grow up, I think our identities are bound to change. We
Yeah.
are bound to evolve because change is the only thing that is constant, as is that Confucius or
Yeah,
something?
somebody. Yeah, I
Or
read
Lao
that
Tzu.
somewhere. Yeah.
I think that was Lao Tzu or Confucius. I'm not really sure, but change is the only thing that is constant. I've definitely gravitated towards more of my Filipino immigrant identity when I moved here. I grew up a Filipino Chinese too, so that is a big population in the Philippines. And so for the longest time growing up in the Philippines, that's what I identified with. That's the community that I identified with
Hmm.
because everyone around me is Filipino, right?
Yep.
And we're always looking for that smaller group that we can then connect more with. Um, and I would say that here in this country, it's definitely being a Filipino, being an API. Um, and just to go back to, invitation to love, which has a very universal meaning. Um, I think that, you know, that Black Indigenous people of color, even if there are nuances in our experiences and in our struggles, um, there is the ultimate, goal and thread of struggle and that connects us, and that is dismantling white supremacy.
Uh-huh.
I think that's the focus of a lot of Black Indigenous people of colors and communities of color, is sort of gaining that equitable space and feeling like we can take the space that we need,
Yep.
um, to be ourselves without being judged, or without needing to conform to a standard that is often informed
Rooted in lots of
rooted
bad things. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
in white supremacy, honestly.
Yeah.
Um,
So I want to. So, two questions to follow up on that. Then, what is the role of choral music? To what degree is choral music going to? Yeah, I'm not necessarily solve these problems. I think that might be a step too far, or maybe it isn't, in your opinion. But then what is like the role as you see it for somebody like me? I'm in this field. This music is being created, and I think we're going to see more and more and more of it. What are our responsibilities in the choral field? Maybe yours as a creator, from your perspective, and as you look at somebody that's like me, trying to do the right thing and make the space and amplify the messages and the people that we should.
I think the purpose of choral music nowadays, and maybe not just choral music, but all types of art forms, is to spread, to spread beauty and love and not compound hatred, and maybe provide equitable spaces for marginalized voices whose stories have yet to be heard in this field. I mean, for the longest time, we've performed choral music by dead white men, right?
Almost exclusively, yes.
Almost exclusively. And that's one perspective. That's not the only I want everyone to realize that that's not the only perspective that's out there. And that a lot of other people who don't, fit in that category also have different ways of thinking and also have stories to tell. And what I would personally like my choral music that I write function at this point in time,
Yeah.
is to be able to ignite a conversation between communities on how we can move forward and create a space that is rooted in love and equality and justice, and not only equality, I would say, but also equity, for everyone. And I think that having the ability to converse about it is a very big first step into making the change that we want happen.
That's very well said, and I will I will definitely take this to heart as we continue to move forward here. It is it's a remarkable time to be reflecting upon all of these things and trying to figure out where we go from here. So thank you for that. I want to shift a little tone a little bit, and I want to play our last piece for the folks here. And it's a piece that Chor Leoni will be actually singing next season, Leron Leron Sinta. Can you tell us a little bit about, first of all, like the folk background on this, and then a little bit about how you came to this version of an arrangement of this song?
So Leron Leron Sinta is one of my earliest published pieces. I think my first published piece was published by Earth Songs. And it is an arrangement of a folk song from the Tagalog region of the Philippines, which is where Manila is from. This is the language that we spoke. This is Tagalog. The Philippines has, of course, a lot of different languages and different dialects. And each dialect has their own collection of folk songs. So you might run into Cebuano folk songs or Ilocano folk songs or Pangasinense folk songs. But Leron Leron Sinta is from the region that I grew up with. It is a children's song, but also a work song. The thing with Philippine ethnomusicology, or musicology rather, is that there are not a lot of resources that you have out there that are very definitive of like, oh, this folk song is a result of XYZ, and probably like there aren't really a lot of theories. I learned it as a kid. It's very, very playful folk song that talks about a papaya tree, talks about farm life. There's a little bit of that courting, like courting ritual.
It's a bit flirtatious in there, as I can sort of see. Yeah,
it's a little bit. It's a little bit, and that I think borrows a lot from the Harana tradition of the Philippines. So Harana is when traditionally a male, a born male, physically born male, stands on the porch of a female that he is courting, and then the female stands at the balcony and he sings to her. And so that's the Harana tradition. That's the courting tradition that is present in the Philippines, and I think a little bit of Leron Leron Sinta is that too. But other than that, it's just a fun, playful song that I really wanted to arrange. I think it's very exciting. It lends itself well to a lot of the different rhythms that I incorporated in it. There's sort of 4 main verses in my arrangement. The second verse is sort of set in this compound meter, a little bit of disruption to how the folk song is traditionally sung. The third verse, I sort of created a more lush setting of it because it's that courting type of thing. And then the last part is like just back to the very beginning of that fun recapitulation of that first initial material.
It has been we've been working on it as a choir, mainly getting the language into us over Zoom, and it's just already been a joy. I cannot wait to sing this piece and to sing it for people. I want to thank you just from the bottom of my heart for joining us. Such great perspective, such eloquently said words around what you do, and even why we all do what we do and what we should be thinking about as we go about our business. It's just it's really great to play your music and to speak with you.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for this space to share these values with a lot of your community.
Oh, thank you. This is Leron Leron Sinta, and this is the former choir of Saunder Choi singing this. This is the Philippine Madrigal Singers.
Let Sisigla ng sino ang dating sa dulo lalamba-lambayan kumapit ka din bakit ka masunog Leron sinta, leleron 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 sinta.
That was Leron Leron Sinta, the Philippine Madrigal Singers, singing that folk song in an arrangement by Saunder Choi, our guest here on Chor Leoni Inside. Chor Leoni itself will be tackling the TTBB version of that next spring, and we are so excited to bring it. It is just such joyful music, and can't wait to sing that with everyone and for people. I want to thank all of you for watching this show. It is always just a joy to connect with you and to these marvelous people who make this music possible for us singers, conductors, and people that love this ensemble singing. We'll be back in 2 weeks with Marcus Garrett, another amazing composer and singer. He is a person I've known for a long time, and can't wait to share his music with you and talk with him. Until then, everybody, stay safe, keep the faith, and we will see you next time.
They say it's alright. They say it's alright. Say it's alright. Have a good time. 'Cause it's alright. Whoa, it's alright. Now we gonna move it slow. Up in the lights are low.